Hello, my name is Keishia, and I need to tell you about the most satisfying moment of petty revenge in my entire life. You know that feeling when someone crosses a line so blatantly that you just can't let it slide? Well, buckle up, because what my cousin Madison did at my wedding was so outrageous that I'm still getting compliments on how I handled it 3 years later. Picture this: your dream wedding day, everything planned to perfection, and then your own family member shows up dressed like she's the one walking down the aisle. I'm talking full-length white gown, complete with a train and everything. Not ivory, not cream, not off-white, pure bridal white. The kind of white that makes every guest's jaw drop and whispers start spreading like wildfire. Now, before I dive into the delicious details of how I served Madison the coldest dish of revenge, let me pause for just a moment. Before we embark on this incredible journey together, I have a small, heartfelt favor to ask. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up. It costs you nothing but means the world to me. And let me know in the comments which beautiful corner of the world you're watching from. Your support truly makes all the difference. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one because what happened next was so perfectly orchestrated that even my husband, who usually stays out of family drama, called it diabolically brilliant. Madison thought she could steal my thunder, but she had no idea who she was messing with. See, Madison and I have history. Growing up, she always had to be the center of attention. When I got into Northwestern University, she suddenly decided she wanted to transfer there too. When I started dating Marcus, she began flirting with him every chance she got. And when I got engaged, well, let's just say her reaction wasn't exactly congratulatory. But showing up to my wedding in white? That wasn't just attention-seeking behavior. That was a declaration of war. And honey, if Madison wanted a war, she was about to get one. What she didn't know was that I had been planning for this exact scenario for months, ever since my maid of honor Jasmine warned me that Madison had been asking suspicious questions about the wedding colors and dress code. The best part? Madison thought she was so clever, so untouchable. She had no idea that her little stunt was about to backfire in the most spectacular, wine-stained way possible. Let me paint you the full picture of how we got to this point, because Madison's wedding day stunt didn't happen in a vacuum. Our families had been intertwined since childhood. Her mom and my mom are sisters, and we practically grew up in each other's houses in suburban Chicago. But where most cousins develop a sisterly bond, Madison and I developed something more like a rivalry that she never seemed to outgrow. It started innocently enough. As kids, if I got a new bike, Madison suddenly needed a better one. If I made the honor roll, she had to make it with higher grades. Our parents thought it was cute, this little competitive streak between us. They had no idea they were watching the foundation of a lifelong pattern where Madison couldn't stand not being the star of every show. The real turning point came during our senior year of high school. I had been dating this guy Trevor for about 8 months, nothing too serious, but we were going to prom together. Madison, who had been single all year, suddenly developed this intense interest in Trevor right around prom season. She started showing up wherever we hung out, always looking stunning, always finding reasons to touch his arm when she laughed at his jokes. The night before prom, Trevor called me to say he couldn't take me anymore. Something about realizing he had feelings for someone else. Guess who he took instead? Yep, Madison showed up to our senior prom wearing the exact same color dress I had shown her weeks earlier, hanging off Trevor's arm like she'd won some kind of prize. That should have been my first red flag about what Madison was capable of. College gave us some much-needed distance. I went to Northwestern, she ended up at University of Illinois, and for a few years, things were relatively peaceful. We'd see each other at family gatherings, exchange pleasantries, and I started to think maybe we'd both matured past our high school drama. Then I met Marcus. Marcus was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. Intelligent, funny, ambitious, and completely devoted to me. He was finishing his MBA at Kellogg while I was working my first job out of college at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. We met at a coffee shop near campus. One of those meet-cute moments that you read about in romance novels. The first time I brought Marcus to a family barbecue, I watched Madison's entire demeanor shift the moment she laid eyes on him. It was like watching a predator spot prey. She went into full charm mode, laughing too loudly at his jokes, asking him endless questions about his business school experience, even going so far as to mention that she was thinking about getting her MBA too. "Keisha never mentioned you were so accomplished," she purred, placing her hand on his forearm as they talked near the grill. Marcus, bless his heart, was completely oblivious to what was happening. He came from a small family and found our big, boisterous clan fascinating. He thought Madison was just being friendly, just interested in getting to know her cousin's boyfriend. He had no idea he was witnessing Madison's classic playbook in action. Over the next few months, Madison found excuses to text Marcus directly. "Oh, I just had a question about business school applications, and Keisha said you might have some advice." Or, "I'm going to be in Chicago for work, maybe we could all grab dinner?" Always framed as innocent, always including me in theory. But somehow I was never actually available when these meetups happened. The final straw came when Marcus proposed. We had been dating for 2 years, and he planned this elaborate proposal at the lakefront, right at sunset. It was perfect. Intimate, romantic, everything I had ever dreamed of. I called my mom immediately afterward, crying happy tears, and within an hour, our entire extended family knew. Madison's congratulations text came 3 hours later. "So happy for you! Marcus is such a catch. You're so lucky someone like him chose someone like you. Someone like him chose someone like me." Let that sink in. That text told me everything I needed to know about how Madison really felt about my relationship, my engagement, and probably my entire life. But I decided to take the high road. I was getting married to the love of my life. I wasn't going to let Madison's jealousy dim my happiness. Planning a wedding should be one of the most joyful experiences of your life, but Madison managed to turn it into a battlefield. The moment Marcus and I announced our engagement, she inserted herself into every aspect of our wedding planning process, always under the guise of being helpful. It started with the venue. Marcus and I had fallen in love with this gorgeous historic mansion in Lake Forest, about an hour north of Chicago. It was perfect, elegant, intimate, with beautiful gardens for photos and a ballroom that could accommodate our 150 guests comfortably. We put down our deposit and were over the moon. 2 weeks later, Madison called me, practically in tears. "Keisha, I need to tell you something, and I hope you won't be mad. Jake finally proposed." Jake was her on-again, off-again boyfriend of 3 years, and honestly, I was surprised they were still together. "We want to get married next fall, and I know this sounds crazy, but we went to look at venues, and we absolutely fell in love with the same place you chose." She went on to explain how they had toured the historic mansion, how it was exactly what she had always dreamed of for her wedding, and how heartbroken she would be if she couldn't get married there. "I know you booked it first, and I would never ask you to change your plans, but maybe we could work something out. Like maybe you could consider a different season? Winter weddings are so elegant." I listened to this entire sob story, feeling my blood pressure rise with every word. Madison wanted me to change my wedding date and season so she could have her dream venue, the venue that she had never mentioned in her entire life until I booked it. "Madison," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "Marcus and I already put down our deposit, sent save the dates, and booked all our vendors for June. We can't just change everything because you decided you want the same venue." I know, she said quickly. "I just thought family is supposed to support each other, right? And Jake's parents are paying for most of our wedding, so money isn't really an issue for us. Maybe we could even help you find somewhere even better." Even better. As if the venue Marcus and I had spent months researching and fallen in love with could just be replaced like an old pair of shoes. I politely but firmly told her no, we weren't changing our plans. She seemed to accept it, but I could hear the edge in her voice when she said, "Of course I understand. I just hope you know how hard this is for me." The venue drama was just the beginning. Next came the dress shopping saga. I had been planning to go dress shopping with my mom, my future mother-in-law, and my maid of honor, Jasmine. It was supposed to be this special, intimate experience. Just the women who mattered most to me, helping me find the perfect dress for the most important day of my life. Madison somehow found out about our appointment at Kleinfeld. Yes, the famous one from Say Yes to the Dress, and called my mom directly. Aunt Caroline, I would be so honored to be there when Keishia finds her dress. I know I'm not in the wedding party, but she's like the sister I never had. My mom, who has always been a peacekeeper, thought it would be lovely to include Madison. She seems so genuine, honey, and she is family. The appointment was a disaster. Every dress I tried on, Madison had an opinion about. Oh, that's pretty, but don't you think it's a little plain? You want to make sure you stand out on your big day. Or, that's beautiful, but are you sure that style is the most flattering on your figure? When I finally found the dress, a stunning A-line gown with delicate lace detailing that made me feel like a princess, Madison's reaction was telling. She got very quiet, studied me for a long moment, then said, "Wow, Keishia, you look different. More mature, I guess. More mature. Not beautiful, not radiant, not perfect, more mature." But the worst part came when we were leaving the boutique. Madison pulled me aside and said, "Can I ask you a favor? Would it be possible for you to send me some photos of your dress? Jake and I are going shopping next week, and I want to make sure I don't accidentally choose something too similar. I would just die if we showed up wearing similar dresses to family events." Red flags were practically slapping me in the face at this point, but I was still trying to give Madison the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she really was just trying to avoid any awkward similarities. Maybe I was being paranoid. I should have trusted my instincts. The final red flag came 3 months before the wedding, when Madison started asking very specific questions about our dress code. "So what exactly are you telling people to wear? I want to make sure I get something appropriate." When I told her we had requested cocktail attire and jewel tones, she pressed for more details. "What about pastels? Are pastels okay? What about white? I mean, I know white is traditionally off limits, but what about cream or ivory?" That's when Jasmine pulled me aside after a family dinner and said the words that changed everything. "Keishia, I think Madison is planning something. All these questions, the way she's been acting, I think she's going to try to upstage you at your own wedding. Jasmine has been my best friend since college, and she has this uncanny ability to read people. When she told me she thought Madison was planning something, I knew I needed to take it seriously. But even Jasmine couldn't have predicted just how bold Madison was willing to be. "I've been watching her," Jasmine said, as we sat in my apartment, wedding planning materials scattered across my coffee table. Every question she asks, every comment she makes, it's like she's gathering intelligence. And that thing about cream or ivory, girl, no normal wedding guest asks about wearing white to someone else's wedding unless they're planning to do exactly that. I wanted to believe that Madison wouldn't go that far. Wearing white to someone else's wedding isn't just a fashion faux pas. It's basically a declaration that you think you should be the bride. It's the kind of move that gets you banned from future family events and talked about for years. But the more I thought about Madison's behavior over the years, the pattern of always needing to be the center of attention, the way she had tried to steal Trevor, her weird obsession with Marcus, the more I realized Jasmine was right. Madison wasn't just going to wear white to my wedding. She was going to try to make herself the bride. "So what are we going to do about it?" Jasmine asked. That's when I started planning my contingency strategy. First, I needed confirmation. I couldn't just accuse Madison of planning to wear white without proof. That would make me look paranoid and petty. But I also couldn't just wait and hope for the best. So I set a trap. I called Madison a few weeks later, pretending to be stressed about last-minute wedding details. "I'm having such anxiety about the weather," I told her. "What if it rains? What if the flowers aren't perfect? What if something goes wrong with my dress?" "Oh, honey, don't worry about your dress," Madison said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I'm sure you'll look beautiful. Besides, even if something happened to it, I'm sure no one would notice. Everyone will be so focused on the ceremony itself. Then I went for the kill. Actually, speaking of dresses, I'm so paranoid that someone might accidentally wear something too formal or too white. I mean, I trust everyone to follow the dress code, but you know how these things can go. There was a pause, a telling pause, before Madison responded. Oh, absolutely. That would be so embarrassing for everyone involved. Don't worry, I would never let that happen at your wedding. The way she said your wedding, like she was granting me permission to have it, told me everything I needed to know. Next, I needed to recruit allies. I couldn't handle this alone, and I couldn't rely on my family to back me up if things got messy. Madison had always been good at playing the victim, and I knew that if I confronted her directly, she'd find a way to make me look like the bad guy. Jasmine was obviously on board from the beginning. As my maid of honor, she was already planning to keep an eye on things and handle any potential drama. But I also brought my other bridesmaids into the plan. My sister Ashley, my college roommate Brianna, and Marcus's sister Nicole. Are you serious right now? Ashley asked when I explained the situation. Madison is actually planning to wear white to your wedding? I'm 99% sure, I said, and I need you all to be ready to help me handle it when she does. Nicole, who had never really liked Madison anyway, was immediately on board. What do you need us to do? That's when I outlined my master plan. If Madison showed up in white, and at this point I was certain she would, we weren't going to cause a scene or confront her directly. Instead, we were going to execute the most perfectly orchestrated accident in wedding history. Here's how it's going to work, I explained to my bridesmaids over dinner at our favorite restaurant. If Madison shows up in white, we wait until the cocktail hour, when everyone is mingling and there are drinks flowing. Jasmine, you're going to approach Madison with a full glass of red wine. I'm thinking a nice dark Cabernet. You'll be animated, telling some story, gesturing with your hands, and then, oops, total accident. Brianna was grinning by this point. This is diabolical. I love it. But it has to look completely natural, I emphasized. No one can suspect it was intentional. Jasmine, you'll immediately apologize, offer to help her clean up, maybe even offer to take her shopping for a replacement dress. We'll be the picture of concern and helpfulness. Ashley raised a practical concern. What if she doesn't show up in white? What if we're wrong about this? Then we have a normal, beautiful wedding, and no one gets wine spilled on them, I said. But I'm telling you, she's going to do it. I can feel it. The final piece of my plan involved Marcus. I debated whether to tell him what I suspected, but ultimately decided he deserved to know. Marcus had always seen the best in people, and he genuinely thought Madison was just an enthusiastic family member who maybe tried a little too hard sometimes. When I explained my suspicions and my contingency plan, Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You really think she would do something that disrespectful?" "I know she would," I said. "The question is, are you okay with how I want to handle it?" Marcus thought about it for another moment, then smiled. "If Madison wants to play games at our wedding, I guess she'll have to deal with the consequences. Just try not to stain the venue's carpet." The morning of my wedding dawned absolutely perfect. Crystal clear skies, temperature in the mid-70s, a gentle breeze that would be ideal for photos in the mansion's gardens. As I sat getting my hair and makeup done, surrounded by my bridesmaids and both mothers, I felt this incredible sense of peace and excitement. For a few blissful hours, I almost forgot about Madison and her potential schemes. I was focused on the fact that in just a few hours, I would be marrying the love of my life, surrounded by everyone who mattered to us. The anxiety about dress codes and family drama seemed silly in the face of something so beautiful and meaningful. Jasmine was keeping the mood light, telling funny stories about our college days while the makeup artist worked her magic. Ashley was steaming everyone's dresses and making sure we had everything we needed. My mom was crying happy tears every 5 minutes, and Marcus's mom was taking approximately 1,000 photos of every moment. "You look absolutely radiant, sweetheart," my mom said, as the hairstylist put the finishing touches on my updo. "I've never seen you glow like this." And I did feel radiant. The dress was perfect, my hair was perfect, my makeup was perfect. Everything was exactly as I had dreamed it would be. For the first time in months of wedding planning stress, I felt completely calm and confident. That peace lasted until about an hour before the ceremony, when Ashley came bursting into the bridal suite with wide eyes and a grim expression. "Keishia," she said, slightly out of breath, "we need to talk. Madison just arrived." My stomach dropped. "And?" "And you were right. She's wearing white. Not ivory, not cream, not champagne. White. Wedding dress white." Jasmine immediately stopped what she was doing and came over. "Are you kidding me right now?" Ashley shook her head. "I wish I was. It gets worse. It's not just white. It's a full-length gown with a train. She looks like she's the one getting married today." The room went completely silent. My mom and Marcus's mom both looked confused, not quite understanding what was happening. The makeup artist and hairstylist tried to pretend they weren't listening, but I could see the shock on their faces. "What does it look like exactly?" Jasmine asked, already going into crisis management mode. "It's strapless, fitted through the bodice, then flows out into this full skirt," Ashley described. "And the train, I'm not exaggerating, the train is at least 3 feet long. She's literally dressed like a bride." My mom finally found her voice. "Surely there's been some kind of mistake. Maybe she misunderstood the dress code." I looked at my mom with as much patience as I could muster. "Mom, Madison specifically asked me about wearing white, multiple times. She knows exactly what she's doing." Nicole, who had been quiet up to this point, spoke up. "I saw her in the parking lot. She's not acting embarrassed or apologetic. She's posing for photos like she's the star of the show." That's when the anger hit me. Not just annoyance or frustration, pure, white-hot fury. This was my wedding day. The day I had been planning and dreaming about for over a year. The day that was supposed to be about Marcus and me starting our lives together. And Madison was trying to turn it into the Madison show. But instead of letting that anger consume me, I channeled it into cold, calculated determination. "Okay," I said, standing up and smoothing down my dress. "It's time to execute the plan." I turned to my bridesmaids, and I could see the same steely resolve in their eyes that I felt in my heart. This wasn't just about defending my wedding anymore. This was about justice. "Jasmine, you know what to do. Wait until the cocktail hour when there are plenty of witnesses around. Make it look natural." "Consider it done," Jasmine said grimly. "Ashley, Nicole, Brianna, I need you all to be ready to jump in with damage control. Lots of concerned gasping, offers to help clean up, suggestions for where Madison might find a replacement outfit." They all nodded solemnly. "And whatever happens, remember, we are shocked and horrified by this accident. We had no idea something like this could happen. We're just trying to be helpful family members in a difficult situation." My mom was looking increasingly uncomfortable with this conversation. "Honey, maybe we should just talk to Madison directly. Explain how inappropriate this is." "Mom," I said gently. Madison knew exactly how inappropriate this was when she chose this dress. She's counting on the fact that no one will want to cause a scene at my wedding. She thinks she's untouchable. "But she's family," my mom protested weakly. "Family doesn't try to upstage the bride at her own wedding," Nicole said firmly. "Madison made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences." I took a deep breath and looked around the room at these women who loved me enough to go to war for my happiness, my wedding day warrior squad, ready to defend my moment in the sun. "All right, ladies," I said, feeling more confident than I had in weeks. "Let's go get me married, and let's make sure Madison's performance gets the reception it deserves." Walking down the aisle was supposed to be the most magical moment of my entire life, and in many ways it was. The string quartet was playing perfectly, the flowers looked like something out of a fairy tale, and Marcus was standing at the altar, looking absolutely devastated by how beautiful I looked. I could see tears in his eyes from halfway down the aisle, and my heart felt like it might burst from happiness. but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't distracted by the whispers. Even during the most sacred moment of the ceremony, I could hear the subtle murmur of guests noticing Madison's outfit. She had strategically positioned herself in the third row, right where she'd be visible in most of the photos, and she was absolutely glowing with satisfaction at the attention she was receiving. The dress was even worse than Ashley had described. It wasn't just white. It was bridal white, with intricate beading that caught the light every time she moved. The strapless bodice was form-fitting, designed to show off her figure, and the full skirt cascaded around her like she was posing for a magazine shoot. The train, which she had carefully arranged when she sat down, spilled into the aisle like a waterfall of white silk. But the worst part? The smug smile on her face. She wasn't even pretending to be embarrassed or apologetic. Every time someone stared at her, and people were definitely staring, she would toss her hair and adjust her dress like she was accepting their admiration. She had turned my wedding ceremony into her own personal fashion show. I caught Marcus's eye during the ring exchange, and I could see that he had noticed too. His jaw was slightly clenched, and there was a hardness in his expression that I rarely saw. Marcus was usually the most easygoing person in the world, but seeing someone deliberately disrespect me and our wedding had clearly struck a nerve. "You okay?" he whispered as the officiant prepared for the final vows. I squeezed his hands and smiled. "Perfect," I whispered back. "Everything is going exactly according to plan." And it was. Because while Madison was basking in the shocked attention of our wedding guests, she had no idea what was waiting for her at the reception. The ceremony concluded beautifully. Our vows were heartfelt and personal. The kiss was perfect, and walking back down the aisle as husband and wife felt like floating on air. The guests erupted in cheers and applause, and for those few moments, Madison's stunt faded into the background. But as we moved into the cocktail hour, the whispers started up again in earnest. "Can you believe she wore white to her cousin's wedding? That's not just white, that's a wedding dress. Someone should say something to her. I can't believe she would do that to family." Madison, meanwhile, was holding court near the bar, accepting congratulations on her beautiful dress from guests who were too polite to call her out directly. She was playing the part of the gracious family member, gushing about how radiant I looked and how perfect everything was, all while ensuring that she remained the center of every conversation. I watched her from across the room as Marcus and I made our rounds, greeting guests and accepting congratulations. She was drinking champagne, laughing loudly, and posing for photos with anyone who would accommodate her. At one point, she even suggested to the photographer that he take some artistic shots of her dress in the garden. "She's really going all out, isn't she?" Marcus murmured in my ear as we watched Madison dramatically gesture while telling some story to a captivated group of relatives. "Just wait," I replied quietly. "The show's about to get much more interesting." That's when I caught Jasmine's eye across the room. She was standing near the wine station, a full glass of deep red Cabernet in her hand, watching Madison with the focused intensity of a lioness stalking her prey. Our eyes met for just a moment, and Jasmine gave me the slightest nod. It was time. I watched as Jasmine began making her way through the crowd toward Madison, carefully navigating between guests while keeping her wine glass elevated and steady. She had practiced this approach earlier in the morning, making sure she could move naturally while maintaining the perfect grip on the glass. Madison was still engaged in animated conversation with a group that included my great-aunt Helen and two of Marcus's business school friends. She was gesturing expressively, clearly enjoying being the center of attention, completely unaware that justice was approaching from behind. Jasmine positioned herself perfectly, close enough to Madison to engage her in conversation, but at just the right angle to ensure maximum wine coverage when the accident occurred. She waited for the perfect moment, when Madison was mid-gesture, telling what appeared to be a very engaging story. "Madison!" Jasmine called out enthusiastically, moving into the group with her characteristic bright smile. "Oh my gosh, you look absolutely stunning tonight!" Madison's face lit up at the compliment, exactly as we had predicted. Jasmine! Thank you so much! I just love this dress. I've been saving it for a special occasion, and I thought, what could be more special than Keishia's wedding? Perfect. She had just given everyone within earshot confirmation that she had chosen this dress specifically for my wedding, knowing exactly how inappropriate it was. Jasmine moved closer, raising her wine glass slightly as she prepared to gesture. You know, I was just telling someone about that time in college when you and Keishia... What happened next was so beautifully orchestrated that I still get chills thinking about it. Jasmine had positioned herself at the perfect angle, close enough to Madison to engage in conversation, but positioned so that when she gestured with her wine glass, the trajectory would ensure maximum coverage of that pristine white dress. "Oh, you know what I was thinking about earlier?" Jasmine said, moving into full animated storytelling mode. "Remember that time in college when we all went to that formal dinner and Keishia was so worried about spilling something on her dress?" Madison's eyes lit up at the opportunity to share what was probably an embarrassing story about me. "Oh yes, she was paranoid all night. She kept saying how disasters always happen when you least expect them," Jasmine continued, raising her wine glass expressively. "How sometimes things just..." And then it happened. As Jasmine gestured with her right hand, her left elbow accidentally bumped into a gentleman behind her who was reaching for an hors d'oeuvre. The bump sent her slightly off balance, causing her to step forward quickly to steady herself. In that moment of apparent clumsiness, the full glass of deep red Cabernet Sauvignon went flying in a perfect arc directly onto Madison's white dress. The wine hit her right at chest level, creating an immediate crimson stain that spread across the fitted bodice like spilled blood. But the physics of liquid didn't stop there. Gravity took over, pulling the wine downward across the white silk, creating rivulets of red that traced down the full skirt like abstract art. The reaction was instantaneous and perfect. Madison let out a shriek that could probably be heard in the next county. "My dress! My dress! Oh my God!" Every conversation in the immediate area stopped. Heads turned. People gasped. Someone said, "Oh no!" with genuine horror. And Jasmine? Jasmine was the picture of mortified concern. "Oh my God, Madison, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, immediately setting down her empty wine glass and reaching for the napkins. "I'm so clumsy. That man bumped into me and I just... Oh no, your beautiful dress." The wine had soaked through the silk instantly, and the stain was magnificent. Not only was it covering a significant portion of the front of the dress, but it was the kind of stain that everyone knew would never, ever come out. This dress was ruined beyond salvation. Madison was standing there, looking down at herself in shock, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For the first time all day, she was completely speechless. "Here, let me help." Ashley appeared as if from nowhere, armed with club soda and a stack of white napkins. "We need to get club soda on this immediately." "Oh, honey, what happened?" Nicole chimed in, rushing over with more napkins. "Don't worry, we'll fix this." The three of them immediately surrounded Madison, dabbing at the wine stain with the dedication of a MASH unit, treating battlefield wounds. Of course, club soda on red wine that had already set into silk was like trying to stop a hurricane with an umbrella. But they made a valiant show of trying to help. Meanwhile, the wine-stained fabric was becoming more and more transparent as it got wet, creating an entirely new problem for Madison's modesty. The dress, which had been so carefully chosen to make her look like a bride, was now clinging to her in all the wrong ways and showcasing exactly why white silk and red wine are mortal enemies. "I think it's actually getting worse," Brianna observed helpfully, as the stain seemed to spread with each attempt to clean it. Madison finally found her voice. "This is ruined. This dress is completely ruined." "Oh, sweetie, I'm sure it's not that bad," Jasmine said soothingly, while continuing to dab uselessly at the stain. "Maybe if we get it to a dry cleaner immediately." But everyone could see that this dress was beyond saving. The wine had created an abstract masterpiece across the white silk that no amount of professional cleaning was going to fix, And then came the moment I had been waiting for. "Madison, honey," my mom said, appearing at the edge of the crowd that had gathered. "Maybe we should find you something else to wear. I think there's a boutique still open in downtown Lake Forest." Madison looked around at all the concerned faces, the helpful suggestions, the genuine-seeming offers to assist her in this fashion emergency. But I could see the exact moment when reality hit her. She was standing at my wedding reception, wearing a ruined white dress that was now see-through in several places, and everyone was staring at her. The attention she had craved all day was still on her, but now it was the wrong kind of attention. I need to go home," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "Are you sure?" Ashley asked sweetly. "We could probably find you something to wear. I'm sure one of the other guests might have a spare dress in their car." But Madison was already gathering up her wine-soaked train, trying to maintain some shred of dignity as she prepared to make her exit. The crowd began to disperse, people returning to their conversations with plenty of new material to discuss. I heard fragments of comments as guests moved away. "Well, that's what happens when you wear white to someone else's wedding." "Did you see how quickly everyone tried to help her? Such nice people." "I can't believe she actually wore white to her cousin's wedding. Such a shame about the dress, but honestly, what did she expect?" As Madison walked away, dripping wine and wounded pride, I felt a surge of satisfaction so pure it was almost intoxicating. Justice had been served, and it had been served with a perfect Cabernet Sauvignon. The rest of the evening was absolutely magical. With Madison gone, the reception transformed into exactly what I had always dreamed it would be, a celebration of Marcus and me, surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. The band was fantastic, the food was delicious, and the dancing went on until well past midnight. Guest after guest came up to congratulate us, and more than a few mentioned how unfortunate it was that my cousin had experienced such an accident with her dress. "That poor girl," my great-aunt Helen said, shaking her head sympathetically. Though I have to say, I was a bit surprised by her choice of outfit. In my day, everyone knew you never wore white to someone else's wedding. Marcus's business school friends were even more direct. "Dude," one of them said to Marcus during the reception, "I don't know what your cousin-in-law was thinking with that dress, but your wife's friends handled that situation like absolute professionals. That Jasmine girl should go into crisis management." But the best comment came from my grandfather, who pulled me aside during the father-daughter dance. "Keisha, honey," he said with a twinkle in his eye, "I've been to a lot of weddings in my 87 years, and I've never seen someone handle family drama with such elegance. Your grandmother would have been proud." I realized later that my grandfather knew exactly what had happened. He had probably seen this kind of family dynamics play out dozens of times over the decades, and he recognized good strategy when he saw it. The photographer managed to capture some absolutely stunning shots throughout the evening. When we got the photos back a few weeks later, there wasn't a single picture that included Madison in her white dress. She had left so early that all the formal shots, the reception photos, and the candid moments were exactly what we wanted, focused on Marcus and me, surrounded by people who were there to celebrate our love. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came about 3 hours after Madison's dramatic exit. I was touching up my lipstick in the bridal suite when Ashley came in with an update. "So I just heard from my friend who works at the boutique in downtown Lake Forest," she said, grinning. "Apparently, a woman came in about an hour ago, completely frantic, looking for a dress to wear to a wedding. She was dripping wet, covered in red wine stains, and demanded to speak to the manager about finding her something appropriate immediately." "And?" I asked, though I had a feeling I knew where this was going. "The boutique closed at 8. Madison was standing outside pounding on the door, still in her ruined dress." I couldn't help but laugh. The image of Madison, in her wine-stained wedding dress, desperately trying to find a replacement outfit after the stores had closed, was just too perfect. "It gets better," Ashley continued. Apparently, she tried 3 other places, all closed, before finally giving up and driving home. Someone saw her at a gas station near her apartment, still in the stained dress, buying a bag of ice and looking absolutely miserable. The poetic justice was beautiful. Madison had spent months planning her grand gesture, probably ordering that dress specifically for my wedding, practicing her poses in the mirror, imagining how she would steal the spotlight. And it had all backfired so spectacularly that she ended up being the cautionary tale that wedding guests would tell for years to come. When Marcus and I finally left for our honeymoon suite that night, I felt more satisfied than I had ever felt in my life. Not just because the wedding had been perfect, though it had been, but because I had stood up for myself in a way that was both effective and completely justified. "You know," Marcus said as we were getting ready for bed, "I have to admit, when you first told me about your plan, I thought it might be a little over the top. But seeing Madison tonight, seeing how calculated and deliberate her choice was, she earned every drop of that wine." "I still can't believe she actually went through with it," I said, taking off my wedding jewelry. "I mean, I suspected she would, but part of me hoped she'd come to her senses." "She made her choice," Marcus replied firmly. "And your friends made sure she learned that actions have consequences. Honestly, the whole thing was handled so perfectly that if I didn't know better, I'd think it really was just an accident." That was the beauty of the plan. It had been executed so flawlessly that even people who suspected it might have been intentional couldn't be sure. Madison couldn't accuse anyone of sabotaging her without sounding paranoid and vindictive. She had to accept the accident at face value and deal with the embarrassment of having to leave her cousin's wedding in a ruined dress. As I lay in bed that night, replaying the events of the day, I felt a deep sense of closure. For years, Madison had gotten away with her attention-seeking behavior because people were too polite to call her out directly. She had counted on that politeness, that family loyalty, that reluctance to cause a scene. But she had finally pushed too far, and she had learned that some lines can't be crossed without consequences. 3 years later, Madison and I have what you might call a cordial but distant relationship. We see each other at family gatherings, exchange pleasantries, and maintain the appearance of family harmony. But there's an understanding between us now, a line that she knows better than to cross again. Interestingly, Madison never got married. She and Jake broke up about 6 months after my wedding, and she's been single ever since. I sometimes wonder if that white dress was less about upstaging me and more about some fantasy she had about being a bride herself. Either way, she learned that trying to steal someone else's moment doesn't get you any closer to having your own. The wine stain incident has become something of a legend in our family. It gets brought up at almost every gathering, usually in the context of wedding etiquette discussions. "Remember when Madison wore white to Keishia's wedding and had that terrible accident with the wine?" It's become a cautionary tale that serves its purpose. No one in our family will ever make the mistake of wearing white to someone else's wedding again. Marcus and I are happier than ever. We have a beautiful home, successful careers, and we're expecting our first child this fall. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about how different that day could have gone if I had just let Madison's stunt slide, if I had taken the high road and pretended not to notice her wedding dress at my wedding. I'm glad I didn't. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, and Madison was definitely one of those people. She needed to learn that there are consequences for disrespecting others, especially family. The wine stain wasn't just about a dress. It was about standing up for myself and my marriage in a way that was both creative and completely justifiable. Would I do it again? Absolutely. In fact, I'd recommend a similar approach to any bride dealing with a potential wedding crasher or attention seeker. Just make sure you have good friends, a solid plan, and a nice bottle of red wine. And to anyone out there planning their own wedding, remember that your day is about you and your partner. Don't let anyone, family or otherwise, turn your celebration into their personal drama. Stand up for yourself, protect your happiness, and never underestimate the power of a well-timed accident. Thanks for letting me share this story with you. If you enjoyed hearing about Madison's comeuppance, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more stories, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to deal with someone trying to steal your thunder? I'd love to hear how you handled it.